A low hum pulsed through the sulfur-tainted air of the Neo-Terra scrap dump, a graveyard of obsolete machines and twisted metal. Night had fallen some time ago, but the orange glow of molten smelters and distant neon signs made it feel perpetually twilight. Jax Marlowe maneuvered his battered hover sled between jagged piles of rusted mining rigs and derelict cargo tanks, his flashlight cutting swaths of clarity through drifting clouds of dust. Every clang of metal under his boots echoed like a warning. The authorities hated rogue salvagers, and the gangs hated anyone who might be carrying something valuable off the lot. Jax paused at the edge of a crater-like heap. Something was off. Drones usually patrolled in pairs, infrared scanners choreographing their flight paths to catch illegal scavengers. Tonight, he'd spotted only one overhead, its cold red eye sweeping slackly. Complacency and chance whispered, in equal measure, an opportunity. He powered down the sled's engine to avoid detection and slipped toward a broken cargo crate nestled at the base of the mound. A faint whimper stabbed the darkness. Jax froze. His world revolved around metal and credits. Living things were liabilities. He gripped the handle of his plasma cutter, ready to ward off rats, or worse, hallucinogens-addled scavengers. But the sobbing came again, soft and human. Kamar? Kamar. He knelt and shone his light into the crate's gaping wound. The beam fell on a pair of phosphorescent eyes so vivid they might have been liquid violet and molten silver. A girl cowered inside, her shoulders trembling, wisps of tangled platinum hair glowing faintly where the light struck. Her clothes were scraps themselves, paper-thin fabric stitched with scraps of circuitry that flickered weakly at each breath. "Hey," Jax said, dropping his voice. He didn't want to spook her into screaming. "You okay in there?" The girl's sobs paused. She lifted a slender hand, teal skin catching the torchlight, and patted her chest. "Hungry? Hurt?" Jax's pulse quickened. An alien, an actual, live one. Earth's treaties banned unregistered extraterrestrials from setting foot on any human colony. The Valarans were rumored to be extinct after the devastation storms of '92, their few survivors snatched up by research vessels or black market collectors. If he reported her, she'd vanish into bureaucratic limbo, or worse. And if the gangs found out, they'd harvest her for ransom. He scanned the horizon. The lone drone drifted away, likely chasing a false thermal signature. Leaving her wasn't an option. She'd freeze or get trampled. He slid off his pack and unlatched the side panel, taking out a ration bar and a spare thermal blanket. "Come on," he murmured, sliding open the crate's side. "Take this, quick." He handed her the ration. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it with trembling fingers and nibbled twice before gulping the rest. Jax unwrapped the blanket and draped it over her shoulders. She shivered violently, clinging to him as if the blanket weighed nothing. "What's your name?" he asked, though he feared the answer might expose her origin. "Aya. Simple. 2 syllables. No family name." Jax nodded gravely. "All right, Aya. I'm Jax. You stay put. I'll sort this out." He flicked a quick stun pulse through the crate's latch, just enough to weld it shut so no one else could open it from the outside. It was a risky move. Cutting off their escape route could trap them both if the authorities descended. But she needed a chance. He crawled out and sprinted to his sled. He tossed Aya's crate onto the cargo rack, secured it with bungee cords, and vaulted aboard. The engine sputtered reluctantly, but caught life. As the sled lifted, he looked back at the dump's chaotic vista, a lattice of machinery grave markers, scavengers' lanterns bobbing like will-o'-the-wisps in the gloom. One wrong turn and the crate could be pierced, its passenger discovered. Jax guided the sled toward the perimeter fence. A single guard tower loomed ahead. Its searchlight swept methodically across the wasteland. Jax held his breath, throttled back, and flicked off his nav tracker beacon. The sled's low hum blended into the night. When the guard's beam hovered on him, he edged behind a twisted hull of a cargo freighter and coasted past. He dared not risk a collision, but the bulky silhouette bought him a few precious seconds. Moments later, he ducked under the fence's maintenance hatch, one of the few his contacts had neglected to seal, and was out. He allowed himself a rare grin. "Easy," he muttered, though his heart pounded. Inside his cramped flat on Aurora Station, Jack settled the crate beside a broken-down exoskeleton frame he'd scavenged earlier. The room was cluttered with parts: plasma coils, HUD implants, biogel vials. He swept aside the metals to make space, testing the crate's weld with a careful tap. No response. He sat on an overturned toolbox, inhaling raggedly. "Okay, Aya," he said softly. "You're safe. For now." The crate's latch clicked. Jax jumped up, plasma cutter at the ready. The panel slid aside and Aya emerged into the small room, blinking against the bright hollow lights. She stood no taller than 5 feet, but there was a strange, graceful tension in her posture, as if every movement had been choreographed for efficiency. Jax knelt, offering his hand. "Let's get you patched up." Aya hesitated, then placed her delicate fingers in his. Her skin felt cool, almost too smooth. Whatever scanners had predicted, she wasn't a droid. He guided her to the makeshift medical bench. Under his ministrations, antiseptic, spray, nanoweave bandages. Her wounds revealed themselves as more than abrasions, faint scorch marks and deep lacerations that had nearly severed muscle. As he worked, Aya watched him with wide, curious eyes, her breathing steadying. When he finished, he stepped back. Aya flexed her fingers and opened her mismatched eyes to him. For an instant, the scrap-ridden shadows of his life fell away. He saw vulnerability, yes, but also resolve. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice echoing softly in the cramped space. Jax simply nodded. He had questions, hundreds of them. But glimpsing the flicker of trust in her eyes, he realized there was only one answer he needed to give first. "Stay," he said, "and I'll figure the rest out tomorrow." Outside, the station's neon skyline glittered with promise and peril. The morning light in Jax's quarters came not from a window, but from the soft cerulean glow of Aurora Station's life support banks. By the time Jax woke, Aya was already awake. Her slender form curled on the makeshift bed, one hand draped over a poorly pilfered datapad. When he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, she looked up with a shy, almost mischievous smile. "Good morning," she whispered, her voice steadier than the first night. "Morning," Jax answered, pouring himself a cup of synthesized coffee. Its bitter aroma filled the cramped space. He sat on the edge of the workbench and watched her. She was barefoot, toes curling against the quilted blanket, and her teal skin caught the light in a way that made him momentarily forget the danger they were in. Aya tilted her head. "What now?" Jack sighed. "Now, we figure out how to live without anyone hunting us." He gestured toward the datapad. "First lesson, human currency." She frowned at the pad's flickering holotext: credits, loans, supply contracts. Jax pointed to a line. "This is what I make selling scrap. Enough to keep us alive." A second line displayed a monthly fee to the station's authorities. "I've got 1 month before the wheels start turning. We need a plan." Aya's eyes narrowed as she scrolled through the finance logs. "I can help," she offered. "On Velara, children learned trades early: engineering, agriculture, medicine." She tapped a button, and schematics of a small drone hovered above the datapad. We build and sell these. Better specs than the market's rust buckets. Jax raised an eyebrow. You've got experience? Her lips curved with pride. My parents built drones for planetary surveys. I watched them. He studied her for a heartbeat. None of this was in the Salvagers Guild handbook. All right, he said slowly. First, breakfast. Inside the tiny galley, Jax rummaged through ration packs while Aya inspected the food processor. After reconfiguring a few circuits, she flipped a switch, and the machine hummed sympathetically. Moments later, a steaming bowl of synthetic oats, textured, with crushed biogel for protein, landed on the counter. They ate in silence at first. The stations hummed the only soundtrack. Then Aya asked, "How do you survive here alone?" Jax chuckled dryly. "I don't. I survive because I have no choice. Aurora station's a crossroads. Smugglers, traders, off-worlders. You learn to be invisible. You learn never to trust anyone." He frowned at the floor. "But you're different." Aya reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "I trust you." Her earnest gaze stirred something in him, something that felt both comforting and terrifying. He squeezed her hand. "All right. Let's get to work." Over the next days, Jax and Aya fell into a rhythm. By day, they scoured the station's underbelly, abandoned maintenance tunnels, decommissioned cargo bays, back-alley black markets. Aya's luminescent eyes could spot salvageable parts in the dark, and her nimble fingers dismantled broken drones with an ease that rivaled Jax's finest-grade servo tools. By night, they returned to the workshop, laying out circuitry, testing biogel capacitors and soldering microcontrol circuits under strobing hololights. Aya absorbed Jax's every technique: how to strip wire without nicking the conductor, how to tune a power regulator to prevent meltdown, and offered her own alien insights. Biogel's capacity to self-repair microfractures, Velaran nanofiber insulation that could have heat dispersion in drone chassis. Jax adapted her suggestions into his designs, and soon their prototypes hummed to life. Sleek, efficient flight assists that outperformed the station's mass-produced models. Word spread fast. A dockhand looking to burn off a shift credit snapped up the first model, marveling at its longevity. Within a week, they had 3 repeat buyers. Jax tallied the credits with a grin Aya had never seen on him before. Late one evening, as they delivered a pair of drones to a middleman in the Hollow Bazaar, Jax paused at the stall's neon display. "You're good at this," he said quietly. Aya's cheeks flushed a soft teal. "I like it." He met her gaze. "You're more than just my ward." The words caught in his throat. Her hand brushed his sleeve as if to steady him. Before either could speak further, the middleman called their final price. Jax handed over the credits and they slipped back into the station's winding corridors. For a moment, Jax wondered what it would mean if Aya truly were free. No longer an alien he had to hide, but a partner in every sense. They arrived home to find a small unpacked crate waiting outside their door, a gift from a grateful buyer, a hollow projector module. Aya's eyes lit up with delight. "Now we can teach ourselves any subject." Jax ruffled her hair, an old habit that made her giggle. "Education, Aya. Tomorrow you get a teacher." That night, as they settled under the flickering hollow stars, Jax rigged across the ceiling. Aya opened her datapad to a course on human history. Jax reclined nearby, tuning his plasma cutter but keeping an ear on her commentary. When she paused, he asked, "What do you think of humans so far?" She considered, complex, fractured, but capable of beauty. He smiled, surprised by the depth in her young voice. "I'd say the same about you." Beneath Aurora Station's artificial cosmos, two survivors, one human, one alien, had found purpose together. They were no longer scavengers and refugee. They were partners charting the first steps toward a future built on trust, curiosity, and something more fragile than any machine: hope. The weeks that followed felt like the turning of gears in a perfectly timed mechanism. Jax and Aya's workshop hummed from dawn to deep into station night, the air thick with solder smoke and the tang of biogel. Every evening, when the last prototype drone had been packaged and dispatched, they slipped away from the neon bustle of Aurora Station to their cramped quarters, where unspoken questions flickered between them like static on a hollow projector. Morning routine. Aya rose before Jax each day, her bioluminescent tattoos, delicate spirals along her forearms, glowing softly in the dim quarter light. By the time he rolled out of his bunk, she had recalibrated his power tools, repaired any leaks in the biogel system, and brewed coffee using her own alien enzymatic kicker to cut the bitterness. He'd find a steaming mug waiting on his workbench, alongside a data slate with her tentative notes on human idioms and slang. "Good morning, Jax," she greeted one day, pouring cream into his cup. He smiled, taking the mug. "Good morning, Aya. You know, morning isn't actually a person," she laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I know, but it feels right." Shared discoveries. During workshop hours, their partnership deepened. Aya learned to anticipate which capacitor would overheat and how to embed a microsensor inside the shell of a propulsion coil. In turn, she introduced Jax to Velaran nanobonding, a technique that allowed metal and organic matter to fuse at a molecular level. Their prototypes grew lighter yet stronger, and whispers of their craftsmanship echoed through the station's black market. One afternoon, as they tested a new drone in a disused maintenance tunnel, Aya's laughter rang out when her model executed perfect barrel rolls. Jax watched her dash the controls with grace and precision, and felt a swell of pride that wasn't wholly paternal. "Not bad for my guardian's designs," she teased, flitting past him. He scooped her up in a mock tackle. "Get back here, kiddo," he said, though his arms lingered around her waist longer than necessary. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, time stuttered. But Aya merely grinned and wriggled free. Jax cleared his throat and returned to the console, blinking at the sensors as though they'd misread his heart rate. Nighttime confessions. When the station's overhead lights dimmed to simulate dusk, they retreated to the observation deck at the very top of Aurora Station. There, a giant hollow dome projected a perpetual sunset over a virtual sea. Jax would lean his head on the railing, and Aya would perch beside him, her legs dangling off the edge. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been if you'd stayed on Velara?" Jax asked one evening, voice low. Aya traced the glowing horizon with her fingertip. "Sometimes. I imagine rivers of living light, forests that breathe, and my parents smiling." She paused, swallowing. "But then I remember the storms, the screams in the nights before it all collapsed." Jax placed a hand on her shoulder. "I wish I could have done something to save them." She leaned into him. "You saved me." In the hush that followed, Aya curled into Jax's side. He felt the steady rise and fall of her breath against his chest, a rhythm he'd come to find as steady as his own heartbeat. He closed his eyes, reminding himself that she was still a child in many ways, yet now in ways he was only beginning to understand. Lines blurring. Back in their quarters, Jax sometimes caught Aya's gaze lingering on him, an intensity that made his chest tighten. He would adjust the hollow curtains hastily, or busy himself with the day's scrap manifests to hide his own quickening pulse. Aya, meanwhile, was navigating her own confusion. She admired Jax's rough kindness, his grim jokes about station politics, the gentle way he brushed a strand of hair behind her ear when he thought she wasn't looking. In her quiet moments, she studied the constellations he'd programmed into their ceiling, memorizing their coordinates alongside the patterns of his face. One night, as Jax repaired a broken drone leg, Aya approached him with a simple offering, a cup of replicated tea. "For your late-night grind," she said, voice soft. He accepted it, their fingers brushing briefly. He looked up. Her silver eyes shone with concern. "Thanks," he whispered, throat dry. He managed a small smile and returned to work, but watched her out of the corner of his eye, torn between gratitude and something more complicated. A shared future. The unspoken tension between them grew with each passing day. Yet each morning found them side by side at the workbench, each night together beneath simulated moons. Their bond was no longer just that of guardian and ward, nor merely salvager and refugee. It was something forged in the fuse fires of late night, soldering in whispered confessions under hollow skies, in the steady trust between two survivors. As Aurora Station orbited the planet below, an invisible thread wove tighter between Jax and Aya, a promise of discovery not only in the machines they built but in the depths of their own hearts. And neither dared speak the full truth of where that thread might lead. Jax woke before dawn to a strange silence. The usual hiss of the life support banks that made their quarters feel like dawn on a distant shore was gone, replaced by an almost reverent stillness. A glance at the bedside clock told him it was barely 4, too early for Aya to be up on her own. He stretched and padded across the room, startled to find her not curled beneath the hollow stars but standing at the edge of the workshop table, backlit by the pale glow of Aurora's windows. Her profile was taller, more angular, her hips subtly curved beneath the simple tunic she had borrowed from him. Jax swallowed. Her skin, once a gentle teal, now carried a pearlescent sheen. The bioluminescent tattoos spiraled brighter than ever, gleaming like constellations sketched on living flesh. "Aya," he ventured, voice thick with sleep and something else, concern. She turned. Her mismatched eyes, once violet and silver, were now both a shimmering argent, deep with unsaid things. "Good morning, Jax," she said, but her voice had dropped an octave, rich and resonant in a way that made his chest tighten. He cleared his throat. "Didn't expect you up so early." "I couldn't sleep." She folded her arms, revealing strength in her slender shoulders. "My body, it feels different." Jax's analytical mind raced. He activated the portable scanner on his belt, something he'd rigged for droid diagnostics but now pointed at her. Data scrolled across the hollow display, heart rate elevated, hormonal markers off the charts, cellular regeneration spiking. "Aya, you're maturing fast." She looked down at her hands as though seeing them for the first time. "Velaran adolescence is tied to neural link frequencies. My exposure to your holos, your teaching, it catalyzed the shift." The words struck Jax like a blow. He swallowed, fighting the urge to step back as her form solidified before him. The girl he'd rescued was becoming a woman in days, not years. I need to analyze this," he stammered. He turned to the tool bench, avoiding her gaze as he grabbed a fresh vial of nanogel. "Sit. Let me take some readings." Aya complied, with graceful ease, sliding onto the stool he'd once used for soldering. She watched him with a mixture of curiosity and vulnerability. As he drew samples, he studied her. The way her new bone structure lent her cheekbones a statuesque sharpness, the subtle fullness of her lips. Every detail felt loaded with implication. When he finished, She rose and paced the small room. Jax frowned at his datapad. Your physiology is still stable, no dangerous mutations, but the growth rate will continue unless we intervene. Intervene? Aya paused, voice trembling. You saved me once. Will you stop this too? He set down the pad, gently guiding her back to the stool. I'm not going to undo what saved you, only slow it to a safer pace. Give you time to adapt. Tears glimmered in her argent eyes. I don't want to lose who I was, or who I'm becoming. Jax's chest tightened. He wrapped a hand around hers. You won't. I promise. For the next 2 days their routine cracked under the weight of change. Aya's strength doubled. The drones they tested in the tunnel shook under her grip. She ate voraciously, nutrients pouring directly into cellular growth. And always, her eyes sought Jax's reaction, watching his brow furrow, his jaw tighten whenever she moved too close. Late on the second night, Jax confronted his own turmoil. He found Aya on the observation deck, tracing the orbit of Neoterra, with her finger as if reading an ancient scripture. The hollow sky above painted her silhouette in icy blues and purples. Aya, he began, voice unsteady. We need to talk. She nodded, shoulders squared. About me. About us. He swallowed. You're no longer 13. You're well past that now. Your body, your mind, they've caught up to mine in ways neither of us expected. She turned, eyes glowing. I feel it too. Her breath caught. Jax, He held up a hand. You're my ward. You always will be. But right now you're an adult. And I need to be sure you're... He paused, searching for the right words. Emotionally okay with that. Aya's lips trembled. The distance between them felt charged, impossible to bridge without acknowledgement. She stepped forward, courage and confusion warring in her gaze. I'm scared. Scared I'll lose you. His heart thundered. You won't. He reached out, brushing a lock of glowing hair from her face. I'll protect you, no matter what form you take. Her silver eyes shone with something fierce and tender. She closed the gap between them, placing her hand against his chest. I need you. Closer. Jax's breath faltered. The line between guardian and partner wavered under the ghost light of Aurora's orbit. He knew the path ahead would test them both, challenge every rule they'd ever lived by. But as her pulse quickened against his hand, he made a silent vow. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Outside, the station drifted on its lonely trajectory, the universe sprawling in every direction. Inside, two hearts shifted on a new axis, drawn by forces neither could yet fully comprehend. That evening, Aurora Station's holodome glowed with a pale, ghostly orb, a perfect replica of Earth's moon, drifting in a starless sky. The observation deck was empty except for them. Jax, leaning against the rail, arms crossed, eyes fixed, on the silvery surface, and Aya, barefoot and radiant, standing just a step behind. She swallowed, then spoke softly. Your world's moon is beautiful. Her silver eyes caught Jax's gaze. But it feels cold, distant. Jax turned, surprised at the tremor in her voice. It's meant to be, he answered, though his chest ached at the metaphor. A reminder of what we've lost out there. He gestured toward the window where distant planets spun like jeweled beacons. And what we're fighting to protect. Aya stepped forward, her heart beating fast enough to echo in the silent dome. No, she said, voice firmer now. This, moon. It isn't about loss, it's about cycles. Rebirth. She paused, drawing in a steadying breath. Jax, there's something I need to tell you. Jax's brow furrowed with concern. What is it? She looked down at her hands, the luminescent tattoos glowing like starlight. I love you. The words came at last, trembling but unshielded. Not as a ward to a guardian, not as a partner in the workshop. I love you. Silence stretched. Jax's heart thundered so loudly he was certain Aya could hear it. He took a step closer, uncertain whether to embrace her or retreat. Aya. His voice caught. She lifted, a hand to his arm, silver light dancing between them. I know it's wrong, she whispered. You saved me when I was 13. You taught me how to be human, showed me kindness. But that's not all I feel now. Her violet-brown iris flickered with unshed tears. I feel something more. I've felt it since the day I first stood properly on 2 feet. And it's only grown stronger these past nights. Jax closed his eyes, memories flooding him. Aya's tentative smile when she replicated her first human breakfast, the way her laughter lit up the workshop, her hand in his as they'd stared out at the city lights, all the while his own heart had nodded in ways he refused to admit. Aya, he said, voice barely audible. You're extraordinary. She tilted her head, hope and fear dueling in her gaze. Do you feel it too? Jax swallowed, hard, the weight of responsibility anchoring him yet truth pulling him forward. He reached out, gently cupping her cheek. Aya, you are everything to me. I would give my life for you. His thumb brushed the curve of her glowing tattoo. And, yes, these past days my heart has... He stopped, exhaling. It has shifted. I've been afraid to admit it because of what I've sworn, what I've promised you as your guardian. But you're an adult now. You deserve honesty. Tears glistened at the corners of her eyes. I don't want us to be confined by titles, she said. I just want you. Jax's resolve steadied. He stepped fully into the moonlight, letting the silver glow wash over them both. Then let's be honest, he whispered. He drew her close, careful and reverent, and brushed his lips to her forehead. I love you, Aya. More deeply than I ever thought possible. She leaned into him, voice muffled against his jacket. I've dreamed of this since I became myself. They stood together beneath Aurora's simulated moon, two hearts realigning on a new axis. No words were needed as Aya lifted her face and their lips met. Gentle at first, then with the promise of everything still to come. Around them, the hollow stars sparkled, a silent witness to their confession and the fragile hope of a love born among the scraps of two shattered worlds. Dawn on Aurora Station found Jax and Aya packing their few belongings into crates. Hollow displays filled with Aya's sketches of Valar flora, Jax's worn plasma cutter, a handful of spare drone cores. Their quiet routine snapped when a perfunctory knock sounded at the door, and a sharply dressed aide delivered a sealed summons from the Valaran consulate. Moments later, Consul Milan stepped through, dignified in silver-trimmed regalia. His hollow badge flickered. Repatriation Protocol, Valaran Citizen Recovery. Aya's hand slipped into Jax's. Miss Aya, Malin intoned. You were registered as a missing juvenile. Under treaty, you must return to the homeworld for debriefing and guardianship reassignment. Jax's jaw hardened. She's no child, and there is no guardian but me. Malin raised an eyebrow. Technically, you hold no legal claim. Yet your bond is noted. She may choose to renounce repatriation and remain under human jurisdiction, provided she is recognized as an adult. Aya, taller, stronger, fully matured, stepped forward. Her argent eyes met Malin's. "I do not seek to return as a ward," she said, voice steady. "I wish to claim my own path. I choose Jack's." Silence stretched. The consul studied her, then nodded once. "Very well. As a Valoran adult, you may elect to register as free agent. You will relinquish certain state benefits, but your civil rights remain intact. I will process your declaration immediately." Relief and uncertainty washed over them both. Jax closed the distance and drew Aya into his arms. Later, Milan departed, with official dossiers in hand, and for the first time Aya was legally free. But freedom held its own risks. Station life was ripe with opportunists eager to exploit an unaligned alien engineer and her human partner. That night, they made their final decision. In the hushed glow of the hangar bay, they climbed into a stripped-down research shuttle Jax had secretly refurbished. The station's neon lights glinted off its patched hull. Aya fastened her harness with practiced precision. Jax ran last-minute diagnostics, voice trembling only with excitement. "Ready?" he asked, sliding into the pilot's seat. Aya met his gaze, heart pounding. "Always." They exchanged a soft smile, and Jax reached out, fingertips brushing her cheek, still warm, still hers. Then the engines ignited in a whisper of power, and the hangar doors yawned open. As Aurora Station receded behind them, its artificial skies giving way to the void, Aya pressed close. "Where to, Captain?" Jax grinned, flicking switches. "Anywhere we want." Together they charted their course past orbit, leaving behind rules and titles. In the infinite quiet of space, two hearts, once guardian and ward, now equals, set their sights on a horizon of their own making.